Hello. Welcome back to Snugglewood, young Dreamlynx. My name is Irene. Snuggle down into your coziest quilt and let tonight's calming tale and soothing sounds relieve you of any worries and guide you towards a deep, restful night's sleep under these beautiful stars above. And so our story begins, in a place called Hearthstone Hamlet, and the sleepy giant tale of Nutty Nook. Tucked within the emerald heart of Snugglewood, far past the whispering willow glades and the quiet babble of Streamshine Creek, lies a warm and welcoming realm called Hearthstone Hamlet. Here, the air always carries the soft scents of herbs, thyme, lavender, and sage, coalescing as if nature had brewed an endless tea. The hamlet lay dotted with small stone cottages, their chimneys puffing out spirals of woodsy smoke that dissolve amongst the far-reaching canopy above. Each cottage anointed with smooth river rock, gathered lovingly by the giants to interlace every corner of the hamlet's lore. At the centre of this picturesque hamlet is Nutty Nook, a communal haven like no other. Wide beams of golden sunlight filter through its lattice windows, painting shapes of honeycomb on the thick oak doors. The Nook stands as more than a building. It's a sanctuary where old friends and starry-eyed wanderers gather to celebrate the gentle art of cooking, sharing, and simply being, tied together by their shared love of the earth's bounty. From the rafters hang garlands of dried dandelion and flax, their colours a subtle reminder of passing seasons. An unmistakable air of belonging fizzes around Nutty Nook, a soft blanket woven of laughter, camaraderie, and the rhythmic warmth of life lived in harmony. The Nook murmurs like a general hive as the day begins. On its wide, ancient tables, handcrafted from the fallen trunks of cinnamon trees, jars of spices sit untouched, but beckon with shattered amber light. A dozen mismatched wooden chairs are scattered, each hand-shaped and infused with the character only time can etch into wood. The scent of freshly baked sourdough weaves through the space like a soft melody, mingling with a bouquet of maple smoke wafting from the enormous stone oven at Nutty Nook's heart. Its hearth is as tall as a giant's knee, with chambers big enough to bake bread loaves, large enough to feed a crowd. And it is, indeed, the giants who keep this hamlet thriving. Towering figures, gentle as the morning dew, move softly through Snugglewood, their strides measured and careful. Hearthstone Hamlet is a shared home, cohabited graciously by both the giants and the forest animals that roam the glens, fields, and woodlands nearby. The deer, squirrels, and badgers have come to trust the nurturing guardianship of these gentle beings, for the giants carry in their hearts an abiding care for every living creature. Today's gathering at Nutty Nook is special. The air seems to whisper as much. A rich tapestry of food and stories comes together as friends gather to prepare the veganic feast, a tribute to the earth for providing its plentiful harvest. Window box gardens spill over with herbs, and patches of root vegetables squash, and kale grow nearby, their emerald and amber hues glistening under Snugglewood's soft daylight. You could lose yourself here, in the symphony of quiet sounds. There is the low purr of a kettle just reaching its boil. Someone, likely Edelin the squirrel, Nutty Nook's self-appointed overseer, is rustling about in the ivy just outside the window. Her tiny paws skitter along the windowsill with anticipation, as though she, too, is eager to sample a roasted acorn or freshly sliced aubergine. Through the open doors, warm breezes carry distant melodies of wind chimes tinkling in the trees. A group of small hares nestles near the great elm bench outside, their noses twitching as they watch the activities within. Lichens soften the forest floor beneath them, creating a perfect place for a midday pause, as though the woodland wants every visitor to feel at ease. Inside Nutty Nook, the rhythmic slicing of carrots on smooth wooden boards sets a gentle tempo. Every movement here feels intentional, measured not in haste, but in the joy of preparing something meaningful. Sweet potatoes are peeled in long ribbons, curling into spirals before a soft whistle beckons from the stove. A mixture of black rice and wild forest mushrooms simmers quietly, sending whispers of earthy warmth into every corner of the room. Azure, the blue jay who often visits Nutty Nook, flits onto the windowsill, emitting soft chirps as though offering approval of the gathering. The atmosphere stretches like a yawn into twilight, as lanterns woven from willow branches are lit, their glows casting golden patterns onto the nook's ceilings. The giants themselves begin their entrance, stooping beneath Nutty Nook's broad doorway with smiles that curl like sunlit waves. One carries an immense woven basket draped with cloth, its contents steaming with oven-fresh flatbreads. Another softly unlatches a carved wooden jar and reveals a trove of sun-dried tomatoes, fragrant with olive oil and basil. It is in the interactions between giants and woodland creatures, between cooking hands and the lively ingredients themselves, that Nutty Nook truly comes alive. Each moment intertwines with a soothing slowness that invites every being here to settle, to savour. The giants sing ancient tunes, soft as a breeze brushing tall grass, as they arrange chestnut soup into long, simmering tureens. Tonight, the feast is assembled not in silence, but in a harmony so quiet it feels like music. Delicate carvings of pears sit atop pastries, crisp and light as the autumn breeze, wafting through open shutters. Toasts are not raised in words, but with sprigs of rosemary held in amicable nods. The community acutely attuned to the sounds of its shared world. The evening deepens as the first stars begin to scatter across the indigo sky, their light just bright enough to peek through the treetops of Snugglewood. Inside Nutty Nook, the glow of the willow lanterns casts gentle, flickering patterns resembling tiny star clusters on the weathered oak beams above. Time feels as though it slows here, a beautiful calming passage, every moment full. The air soothes with a warmth of kinship, a collective togetherness belonging to all who have gathered within these walls. The giants move gracefully, their massive steps silent on the wooden floor, their hands deft despite their size. One of them, known as Bramble, crouches by the enormous stone oven. With movements so careful, they seem ceremonial. Bramble sings an ancient melody, a hearty tune passed down through generations. The sound fills the room like a mirage, including itself into the very fabric of the evening. Beside him stands Elmira, her hair a cascade of silvery braids that gleam like moonlight. She's sprinkling crushed lavender petals over loaves of warm sourdough, the floral aroma weaving into the grand scents already filling the space. At one of the long cinnamon wood tables, the forest creatures gather, drawn irresistibly by the promise of the feast. A fox, his bushy tail curled neatly around his paws, sits in quiet anticipation while a cluster of sparrows flit above, chirping softly, their wing beats fluttering like whispers. A family of hedgehogs waddles forward, their tiny noses twitching as they scout out the best place to settle among the assortment of mismatched chairs. It is a sight so serene, so harmonious, that one could almost forget the boundaries which sometimes exist between woodland creatures and towering giants. Edelyn, the squirrel, remains the self-appointed overseer of the night's proceedings. She scampers along the tabletops, retrieving stray crumbs here and there, her tiny body a blur of movement as she ensures everything is just as it should be. Occasionally, she pauses to chitter in what sounds very much like approval, before leaping effortlessly to the next surface, her fluffy tail trailing behind her like a banner of excitement. On another table, a cauldron sits. It is made of a dark iron, its surface etched with spiraling runes that glint faintly in the firelight. Inside, a creamy chestnut soup simmers gently, sending up delicate puffs of steam that carry the lightest hint of thyme, bay leaves, and roasted garlic. Forest mushrooms lend it an earthy depth, while a handful of wild nettle seeds scattered over the top adds an intriguing touch of nutty sharpness. Bramble stirs it occasionally with a great wooden ladle, his movements slow and deliberate, as if every stir infuses the soup with an extra measure of care and love. Outside, Snugglewood seems alive with the night's energy. The wind chimes strung high in the trees sing softly in the evening breeze, their glistening notes blending with the distant hoot of an owl. Fireflies dance just around the corner, their tiny lights like grounded stars, illuminating patches of moss and tangled roots. The hairs that had gathered earlier stretch and settle into the algae-soft covered ground, their little ears flicking occasionally as if to tune in to the sounds of the night. Inside, the meal is nearly complete. A platter of roasted acorns, glazed with a thin drizzle of maple syrup, joins the spread next to bowls of blackberry-studded beet salad. Spiced nut loaves, carefully formed and baked to perfection, are sliced into hearty portions and set with small pats of herb-infused peanut butter. The giants work with a gentle efficiency, paused only by fleeting, knowing glances exchanged between them. Unspoken reminders that this feast is about more than food. It is a ritual, a tribute to the land and all it provides. No more words are needed. A ripple of understanding moves through the gathering, felt rather than spoken. Bramble dips the goblet slightly, and Elmira picks up the tune he had been humming earlier. Her voice soft yet steady. Soon, the other giants join in. Their voices a glorious blend of deep, resonant tones that fill every inch of the room. Even the forest creatures seem to pause, as if listening, their ears pricked and alert. The meal begins, but it is unlike any other. There is no rush, no clatter of utensils, no loud conversation to break the spell. Every bite is taken with intention. Every sip of nettle soup, or nibble or sourdough, made sacred in its own way. The simplest of foods, roasted carrots, nut-studded grain cakes, bowls of raspberries dusted with powdered mint, transform into something far greater than the sum of their parts. It is though time has shuffled. As the meal winds down, the room becomes quieter still, except for the crackle of the stone oven's fire and the occasional soft chirp from Azure, the blue jay who remains perched at his usual spot on the windowsill. One by one, the creatures settle into comfortable spots around the room. The fox curls into a ball at the hearth, his fur gleaming in the firelight. The hedgehogs find a nook beneath the table, where the wooden floor still holds a hint of warmth from the stove. The giants, too, find their places. Bramble leans carefully against one of the sturdy beams, his eyes half awake as he gazes into the fire. Elmira retrieves a great woven blanket from a corner chest, draping it over her lap as she sits cross-legged beside the window, her silhouette framed by the soft, silvery light of the rising moon. And then, as if called by the tranquil energy of the room, the stories begin. One of the giants, Ash, speaks first. His voice is a sonorous baritone, steady and rhythmic, perfect for weaving tales that seem to linger in the air long after they are told. He recounts the story of the first giant to wander into Snugglewood, a wanderer humbled by the beauty of the forest and the kindness of its creatures. As Ash speaks, the glow of the lanterns seems to deepen, their light golden and warm. A sense of peace fills the room, as if every creature, big or small, giant or tiny, is wrapped in a cocoon of belonging. The Nutty Nook was a hidden enclave within Snugglewood, a cosy hollow nestled at the base of the oldest oak in the forest. With walls made of twisting roots and a soft carpet of moss, it was a place of refuge that seemed to breathe with the forest. The giants called it Nutty Nook for the abundance of hazelnuts and acorns scattered across its floor, left behind by the busy squirrels that darted through the intertwining branches above. By day, the nook twinkled with golden rays that filtered gently through the canopy, and by night it became a sanctuary of calm, where the sleepy giants gathered for their most cherished tradition, sharing the sleepy giant tales. On this particular evening, the woodland seemed more beautiful than usual. The crisp scent of autumn mingled with the earthy aroma of fallen leaves, creating an air of contentment. The Nutty Nook, illuminated by the gentle glow of fireflies drifting among the bushes, was prepared for its nightly ritual. A small fire crackled at the centre, its flames weaving shadows across the twisted roots. Around it sat the giants, their massive forms so at ease with the space that their presence felt as natural as the growing trees around them. Bramble, who always took his spot nearest the fire, leaned back against a large root, his form silhouetted against the soft orange glow. Elmira settled herself not far from him. She had brought a satchel filled with freshly gathered acorns, their smooth, polished shells gleaming in the light. The other giants, Ash, Willow, and the quiet but observant Thistle, arranged themselves in a wide circle, each one wrapped in the stillness of the moment. The night was crisp enough for the cotton shawls they wore, each stitched with patterns of leaves, stars, and stories passed down through generations. The sleepy giant tales began like all traditions of Snugglewood, grown from the respect for the land and its gentle wisdom. These tales were not merely for entertainment. They wove lessons into the fabric of their words. Lessons of patience, kindness, and the power of quiet strength. The giants often spoke of the time before Snugglewood, a time of wandering through lands unknown, when rest was a fleeting luxury. The stories reminded them that the sanctuary they now cherished did not come without struggle or growth. Ash was the first to speak again tonight. His voice rumbled softly, resonating with the hollow like the roots themselves were listening, eager to absorb the story he would tell. He spun a tale of Moonseed, the smallest giant to walk the forest, whose gentle demeanour masked an inner courage that saved Snugglewood during harsh, barren winters. Moonseed, despite her size, had found the hidden nectar of the winter bloom, a flower so rare it only grew under moonlight during the coldest nights of the year. Her persistence had sustained the creatures of the forest when the earth seemed unwilling to give. The giants gathered in Nutty Nook, listening intently, their half-closed eyes betraying the comfort they felt, imagining the heroism of their diminutive ancestor. When Ash's tale ended, Elmira began her own. She spoke of the endless ember, a mythical fire kindled in the heart of a long-forgotten glade. It was said that this ember gave warmth not just to the body, but to the soul. This tale, however, came with a message. Elmira described how the seekers of the ember learned that its warmth could not be hoarded into one hearth. It grew dimmer if it was not shared, teaching those around the Nutty Nook that true comfort flourishes when given freely. Each giant shared their story in turn, their voices deep yet gentle against the rhythm of creaking branches and rustling leaves. Through their words, the Nutty Nook became a space beyond the physical, an expanse of memory and imagination where the forest felt alive with the tales. The very air seemed to grow warmer, softer, as if the stories brought the giants and the land into closer harmony. Even the smallest creatures in the forest appeared to pay heed. A family of squirrels stopped their chattering and nestled into the crook of a branch, their tiny eyes glinting as they listened. A moth fluttered fondly around the fire's glow, its delicate wings catching the light in brief, shimmering arcs. As the night stretched on, sleep began to weave its own spell over the group. Each giant's form grew heavier, with the ease of contentment, their moves slow and unhurried. Thistle, who rarely spoke, added the final tale of the night. It was brief but poignant, an ode to the cycles of the seasons, the balance of growth and rest, and the wisdom of letting go when the time was right. His words carried the weight of endings, and as the fire burned lower, the forest seemed to mirror their quiet closure. By the time the last ember of the central fire had dimmed, Nutty Nook was still. The giants had drifted into a peaceful slumber, their heads gently tilted, with soft snores blending into the symphony of the nocturnal woods. The fox curled by the doorway twitched in his sleep, a satisfied spirit among his towering friends. Above, the trees stood as protectors, their branches cradling the hollow with care, while the first light of dawn lay delicately on the horizon. Eventually, the twilight deepens and wears itself into night. Content rumbles are exchanged, and the air in Nutty Nook settles into a cosy stillness as the wearied residents of Hearthstone Hamlet find their rest. Lantern light flickers gently in the still darkness, leaving luminous silhouettes of rosette carvings against the stone walls, as though the walls themselves wished to keep the story alive. Beyond Nutty Nook, the forest falls into a deeper hush, with the stars above Snugglewood glowing as though dipped freshly in silver. Only the sound of soft, even breaths lingers, carried on the crisp woodland breeze, sweeping through Hearthstone Hamlet.